The Rasulid Hexaglot is one of the most interesting and unique literary sources from the 14th century Islamic or even Mediterranean world. It was or is, as the manuscript still exists, as far as I've been able to find, a part of a larger majmu'ah, or this is basically a compilation manuscript common in Islamic world that is a lexicon consisting of 6 languages. Turkic, Mongol, Greek, Armenian, Arabic, and Persian. What you see on screen now is not the Rasulid Hexaglot, but rather the Catalan Atlas, which I included here just to show the kind of world in which the Rasulid Hexaglot was created. There was a lot of political changes that occurred in the 14th century. The Ilkhans of Iran, that is the Mongol dynasty of Iran, had fallen away by the 1330s. The Ottomans in Anatolia were gaining power, although at that point it was not clear what they would turn into. And the Byzantine power had been severely weakened by the Fourth Crusade, although they were still surviving. And the Rasûlids, who were they? They were a dynasty that had taken over Yemen in the wake of the collapse of the Ayyubid dynasty, which was the predecessor to the Mamluks, who are arguably the most dominant Mediterranean Islamic power in this period. And the Rasûlids were an Oghuz Turkic dynasty that established their rule in Yemen, and this is where the Hexaglot was created. The Rasulid dynasty emerged in the early, rather the late 13th century, and endured until the beginning of the 15th century, when the state unraveled. But despite being a relatively small power, perhaps compared to the Mamluks, they were well situated in Yemen and had access to important Indian Ocean trading ports and access to the Red Sea, which allowed them to trade both with the West and the East. The author of the Hexaglot, though, was the Rasulid ruler al-Malek, al-Afḍal, al-ʿAbbās bin ʿAli, who reigned from 1363 to 1377. And during his rule, he faced some instability in the state, but like his predecessors, many of the Rasûlids were apparently quite intellectual. He created a majmu'ah, or a compilation manuscript of works of various genres titled Fusul Majmu'ah fi al-Anwa' wal-Zuru wal-Hisad. And within this majmu'ah, which has also been published, and of course the references will be in the video description, the Rasulid Hexaglot is one of the texts, and there's also a Giz, or Ethiopian language, glossary as well in the majmu'ah, but it's a separate work. But we can see that al-Malek, al-Afḍal was quite well educated. And it sort of makes sense that a work like this would be created in Yemen, a major trading area, with obviously a lot of linguistic mixing. And here on screen you can see this is what the hexaglot looks like. As far as I know, based on the references, the actual manuscript is still held privately in Yemen, although I don't know, with the conflict that's been happening there for quite some time. I don't know what the status of it is or if it's been moved, but at any rate, this is what it looks like. Now, the structure and organization of the hexaglot is interesting. So, the first part of the manuscript is a 5-language dictionary, and the entries are in Arabic, Persian, Turkic, Greek, and Armenian, and there are 2 sets of entries on each folio. Now, the third set of entries is a different glossary and is separate entries for Arabic and Mongol, Arabic to Turkic, and Arabic to Persian. And for all of the glosses, Arabic, the same Arabic definitions appear for each language. And later on in the text, there is yet another lexicon that has entries in Turkic, Persian, and Arabic, organized into 4 sections. Now, the interesting thing about this work is it does not appear to have been conceived as a whole, so it's a kind of compilation of lexicons within a compilation manuscript. And this indicates that more than likely it was copied from multiple texts. Now, the Arabic and Persian would have been more than likely well known in Yemen at the time, but the Turkic, Mongol, Greek, and Armenian are perhaps a little bit more interesting, and maybe the reason why the hexaglot was created to begin with. The Turkic elements of the glossaries consist of both Kipchak and Oghuz Turkic, probably drawn from Mamluk glossaries, and from those Mamluk sources, it's kind of hard to tell often what is Kipchak, what is Oghuz. Of course, the Mamluk slave soldiers, especially in the 14th century, would have probably come from both Oghuz or Kipchak background, and so there's probably a degree of mixing. There are also a few terms of even further Eastern Turkic language from that time, perhaps from Khwarezm, such as adak for foot, or kuduruk for sheeptail, edrim for saddle pad, which in Kipchak and Oghuz are ayak, koyruk, and edim. But we also have Western Azeri terms such as ildirim for lightning bolt, which in Ottoman and modern Turkish would be yildirim, and this was also a form noted. This particular form was also noted in Mamluk texts. The Mongol components of the hexaglot come from Ilkhanid sources. This makes sense, as the Ilkhans had been the most dominant Mongol power in the region that would be relatively close to the Rasulids. And within the Mongol lexicon, there are also Oghuz and Turki or Chagatai terms within it, which is another clue, it seems, that for an Ilkhan source for the Mongol. The Greek elements are kind of interesting because they're based on the everyday spoken language that do not match with the literary texts that we have from the period. And the hexaglot was probably reflecting a Anatolian or Cypriot dialect of Greek, and which would make sense as there probably would have been Greek merchants coming to Yemen rather than necessarily Greek texts to model the hexaglot off of. The Armenian is Western Armenian and comes from probably the Armenians of Cilicia that had settled there earlier, and their language is what was represented in the Rasulid Hexaglot. And the hexaglot is by no means a unique work in Islamic history or the Mongol history that preceded it and was contemporary to it, as all of these empires ruled over many different types of people, many different languages, and naturally there was a move to create dictionaries and glossaries of various kinds. One more famous example than the Rasulid Hexaglot is Mahmud al-Kashgari's Divan-i al-Turk, that is the compendium of the languages of the Turks, which dates from the 1070s AD. And so this was by no means a new thing. I think the Rasulid Hexaglot is notable because of the kind of ambition to cover 6 languages. So, once again, Turkic, Mongol, Armenian, Greek, Arabic, and Persian. And it offers us a window into this world of the later 14th century, where we have a lot of people moving around, and these empires needed linguists, not just to write lexicons, but to administer and to translate. And this was common across states in Eurasian states in this period. And contemporary to the hexaglot, you have also in the Mamluk Sultanate a lot of lexicography from Turkic to Arabic, as the Mamluk sultans were quite interested in their mother language. The Ottoman Empire, both in the 15th century and later on in the 16th century, also composed lexicographical works of various kinds to accommodate their many subjects. And why was this, especially, let's say, after the Mongol period? And I think I agree with one of the contributors to the critical edition of the Rasulid Hexaglot, T.T. Alson, where he writes, the assembled evidence warrants the conclusion that the multi-ethnic and multilingual Mongolian Empire was a major catalyst in the growth of language study throughout Eurasia during the 13th and 14th centuries. The Mongols themselves generously rewarded those with linguistic skills, organized schools for language training, encouraged translation, and sponsored or inspired compilation of multilingual vocabularies. There were, of course, other and quite extensive language training and translation enterprises before the Chinggisids. The rendering of the Buddhist canon into Chinese and the Central Asian vernaculars and Greek scientific texts into Arabic are the best known examples. While all these enterprises had profound cultural consequences, the Mongols, I think, had the greater reach. Their personnel policies, administrative procedures, cultural preferences, and religious patronage, as well as their political prestige, produced a package of powerful incentives for language study that operated on a truly continental scale. And I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. The Mongol moment in Islamic history is quite important. I think it's easy to sort of dismiss the Mongols in some ways, or just look at them as a destructive force, which they certainly did plenty of that. There's no question. But it's more the legacy of the Mongols. The Mongols brought a lot of people into contact with one another that had not been so. And in the Islamic world in particular, they both actively and kind of indirectly influenced a lot of transformations in kingship, ideas of kingship, ideas of law, and that sort of thing. So the Rasulid Hexaglot, I think, is an interesting example of this, where we have kind of many languages now coming together that in the preceding, say, century or two, really had not much contact or very limited contact. I think often one of the surprises I had, for example, reading Tabari's history, and which dates from the 900s. This is, of course, al-Tabari's history of prophets and kings. Tabari certainly writes about mentions, for example, the Byzantine Empire or the West, kind of points further west, but he doesn't really dwell on it. I found that to be quite surprising when I was doing research once. And, I think by the time we move into this period of the mid to late 14th century, we see a lot more contact and a lot more interest in foreign, lands and different languages, new people coming together, and, we have to understand each other. And especially for the dynasties that were commissioning or creating these kinds of works, that's all the more important. So I still have, after making this, I still would like to learn more about the Rasulids and the Rasulid Hexaglot, especially the connections between Mongol and the contacts between Mongol and the kind of more established Middle Eastern languages like Arabic and Persian. The connections between Turkic and Mongolian are kind of more direct and more explored, I think. But it is, I think, quite interesting to have Mongol and the Near Eastern languages brought together, and also the fact that they included Armenian and Greek. So we have, so quote unquote Western languages alongside the Eastern languages, and I think that also shows us that the world that the Rasulids inhabited on the Indian Ocean coast was really different than even what was the kind of society was in the Ottoman Sultanate at this time, or in Mamluk Egypt. So an interesting mix of different languages and cultures, which certainly makes sense for a trading region like Yemen. So I hope you found this interesting. Maybe I'll do a follow-up on the Rasulid Hexaglot in the future, or more of these kind of lexicographical texts. But if you have any comments or any suggestions for a future video, please let me know, and thank you for watching.